Adam Potkay, so nice to see you again. I look forward to our conversation today and to sharing it with PMLA readers and MLA members and those who are interested. Um, One thing that really stood out in the search for a new editor for PMLA um, was your vast experience in editorial work, that you have done this a lot already. And I wonder if you would tell our listeners, our viewers, a little bit about your own professional research background, but also about your background in editorial work.
Thank you. I will try to do that. There is a lot to tell. I'll be very selective
Okay.
because I've been, if you include grad school, I've been in academia for over 40 years. Also, I've been an MLA member for 40 years. That's where I'm at. And just about PMLA, I've published three articles in PMLA between 1992 and 2015 under three different editors. And I was on the editorial board in 2008 to 2010. And it was a great experience, which has
Great.
made me excited about the invitation to be the editor now because I love that. I love the collegiality. I love collaborating with the board. It was a wonderful group. And I know some people who've been on the board recently, and it remains a great experience. But anyhow, a little about me. My main are 18th century studies and Romanticism. Um, my dissertation was on David Hume and 18th century rhetorical theory and practice in Britain, but also in France. With David Hume, I've always worked between or philosophy and literature. So much so that my second book, A Passion for Happiness, Samuel Johnson and David Hume, was cataloged by the Library of Congress as General Ethics, BJ, not literary criticism, PRPA, though it was a bit of both. The fun story there is for readers of a certain age, I went to William and Mary Library when they shelved the book, and I was shelved right next to Robert Pirsig, alphabetically, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. How's that? You have to be of a certain age to appreciate that. Anyhow, I'm homed in English, but am very much a comparatist with reading knowledges of French, Latin, ancient Greek, a little Italian, a smattering of Czech language, smattering of Slavic languages, including Czech, a very little German. So I love that. The third book, I won't list them all, but the third book was called The Story of Joy from the Bible to Late Romanticism. And that won the American Comparative Literature Association Award for Best Book in Literary History and Criticism 2006 to 2008. And a fun story about that is what one doesn't expect a prize, but one even less expects translations into. The book was translated into, of all things, Romanian, Polish, and Portuguese from Brazil. And according to academia, I get many more citations of that book in the Portuguese translation than in the English copy. So that's a fun story. Since then, a number of more monographs. Uh, Forthcoming, now moving toward some editorial work, forthcoming, I have an edited collection of essays as a volume in the new Cambridge History of Rhetoric. It's volume 4 of a huge 1.5 million word, 5 volume set. And my volume concerns 1640 to 1900, that is Jesuit rhetoric in Spain through Nietzsche. So it's a large, capacious topic, very international crowd of contributors. It was great working with Cambridge University Press and their copy editors. And I just wanted to mention as an early achievement in terms of an edition, way back in 1995, with a former graduate student of mine, Sandra Burr, we did an edition called Black Atlantic Writers of the 18th Century, Living the New Exodus in England and the Americas. It was the first readily available in the US uh, diplomatic reprint of a number of these texts with full notes, biographies, and a lot of archival work on Equiano, Cugoano, Morant, Grenier. Uh, it was a very well received volume back in the 90s. It just filled a need. It was ahead of its time that way. Um, but on top of these editions and other editions and edited collections, I was hired into editorial work. My first job and my only permanent job has been at William and Mary, where I was hired in 1990. And my senior colleague, Bob McCubbin, edited 18th Century Life. It was a journal that used to be published by Johns Hopkins Press. Then it went to Duke Press. But I've been involved with it for 36 years. I was brought on board immediately an advisory editor. Immediately, Bob said, "Here, read this. What do you think of this? Write a report on this." Then I became interim editor when he was on leave. I was still assistant professor and I was interim editor, editing work and sometimes dramatically editing work by former professors of mine and, cutting things up and stuff. So I was thrown right into the fire and I loved it and continue to love it. I was book review editor for um, 9 years and sent out a lot of books to review and edited those reviews. And I did a fair amount of line editing, real editorial sort of work. Um, Also for other editorial boards, a lot of work, vetted probably, well over 100 articles over the years and dozens of books for university presses. So a lot of editorial work, and I like editorial work.